Hello, I am Sean Williams, and today I'm going to be talking about everyday design sprints. So we're doing it a little bit differently. We found a bug this morning and working this out. So, but I think we have a solution for any questions or comments you guys have. Feel free to send those over, and I'll answer them as we go. So yeah, everyday design sprints. Cut through endless discussion and get stuff done. So I'm Shawnee Williams, and I worked for about a decade writing and producing in Hollywood, including going to the Sundance Film Festival in 2003. I was a producer on a movie that had the youngest director at the time to get into the festival. And we then went on to found Foot in the Door Entertainment, which had an open submission policy to screenwriters coming out of USC. And then my wife got a job here in Minnesota. So you can't really do Hollywood stuff from Minnesota. So I got into writing comics professionally, which then led me to found Comiker Press, which has the best contract for creators in the industry, according to a comics lawyer. So background's really just about empowering creators and that kind of thing. And so after doing that for a number of years, I kind of organically got into augmented reality for the last few years, including working with the Magic Leap platform. And then more recently, I co-founded a telemedicine company called TeleThera Inc. And we are launching our Empath app in the next couple of weeks. But currently for the day job, because we all have day jobs, right? I'm working for READY, the Rochester Area Economic Development Inc. And we oversee the Economic Development Fund for the city of Rochester, and we collaborate on the Southeast Minnesota Capital Fund. And then I also run the Mayo Clinic Business Accelerator. Also working for the Development Corporation of Austin and Austin Community Growth Ventures. And over there, we have the Launch Coworking Space and ran 3 cohorts of the Startup Factory, which is a lean startup curriculum. And this year, we founded the Austin Area Angels Angel Network. Both groups are part of E1 Entrepreneurs First in Southeast Minnesota, which is backed by a grant from Launch Minnesota. And we also founded the Greater Minnesota Co-working Passport, which is a program to let co-working members use their membership at different co-working spaces around the region. And of course, that went live right before COVID hit. So it's kind of been a little bit nascent there. But then I guess more significantly, and why we're here today, is I'm a certified facilitator for running design sprints. So what are design sprints, for those of you who aren't familiar? Design sprint uses specific processes for rapidly solving big challenges, creating new products, or improving existing ones. It basically takes months and months of what would be, just like normal work at a normal organization and compresses it down into a few days. And so problems that it solves doing that, teams often working towards unclear goals that shift as you work on them, teams feeling pressure to be innovative, but don't know where to start. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later. Teams lacking real data on which to base business decisions, and just talk about stuff until, again, mission creep, that kind of thing. And then product development cycles that run too long, causing everyone to just kind of burn out and lose steam. So design sprints, the system of design sprints that I use were developed at Google Ventures by Jake Knapp. And what he saw as the normal process is you have an idea, you build it, you launch it, and then you get data. And you use that data to do the cycle again. And what he was seeing is that basically you'd have the idea and then the build cycle would kind of just go on and on and on. And he really kind of shifted focus to, what if we have the idea and we can gather that data right away and just iterate a lot more quickly. And so that's where design sprints came from. And design sprints are based around a set of core principles that we'll be talking about here today that can be used outside of just doing a full, week-long design sprint. So the process is flexible, but the principles aren't. So getting into the principles, one of the most important ones is together alone. And what this means is that you're working as a group, but everyone is contributing their own ideas individually. There aren't big group discussions or anything like that. So again, together, alone. Don't rely on creativity. This is one of the core tenets. Looks like screen is not sharing right now. So let's see if we can get back. Okay. Let's see if we can share the screen again. Okay. So in case you guys missed all that, I will go back to here, design sprint core principles. So together alone is, again, just working together, but alone. Not relying on creativity. Okay, cool. So not relying on creativity. So the thing with this one that I found, this is a slide that I did this presentation for a bunch of high schoolers in a CEO program in Mower County. And I almost cut this slide because it's like, don't rely on creativity. Like, you know, who needs to be told that? You know, kind of relying on my background as a writer myself. And I'm like, no, I'll leave it in. So in doing that presentation, you know, I came to this slide and I saw heads all around the room, just like nodding. And I realized that, oh yeah, no, I, you know, totally take creativity for granted, but there's a pressure that some people feel, you know, when they're told, oh, just come up with ideas, be creative, that can be really inhibiting. So the design sprint process really kind of cuts through that and gets, you know, gets you out of, you know, what might be a tense situation and more into your comfort zone, regardless of your level of comfort there. Tangible is more important than discussion. This is obviously significant because, you know, again, with talking, you can go in circles and end up in the same place where you started, whereas having stuff written down, it gives you a jumping off point. A good analogy I have here is from back when I was in film school. One of my colleagues would obsess over every single detail in his screenplay. And I don't know if to this day he has finished the screenplay because getting started is better than being right. And, you know, just getting a first draft down, you know, powering through your ideas in this case is more important than finding the perfect solution. You know, the idea is to come up with solutions and to test them and move on. So, so what is an everyday design sprint? An everyday design sprint is, for example, what I call a 30-minute action meeting. And this is a system I came up with to really just kind of like prioritize getting through those, you know, weekly meetings or whatever, where you just talk about stuff. Heavens knows we're all in way too many meetings these days anyway. So a 30-minute action meeting is a creative problem-solving loop. And that loop is noting, sticking, voting, and then prioritizing. So again, getting back into the design sprint principles, everyone notes alone, and then you stick them up on to a surface. You vote alone, and then you prioritize. And it's actually like a 3-step process. First, you talk about what's moving us forward, then what's holding us back, and then finally solutions. So the analogy is kind of like a sailing ship. You know, what's moving us forward is the sail, and what's moving us back, or what's holding us back, is the anchor. So what's moving us forward? This is, and again, like in keeping with the 30-minute action meeting, you know, kind of format, you take 4 minutes and everyone writes down, you know, what's working currently in the group or, you know, your process or whatever. And then you stick them all up. on a board. And this is all obviously for talking about working in the same shared space in the physical world. I'm going to talk a little bit more later about how to do this remotely, which is actually just as easy as it is in person. And then next you talk about, and the important thing with starting out with the positive stuff is you want to frame everything in a positive light. You want to get off on a good foot, right? I was actually in a meeting last week where we did this at the end of the meeting, and like the whole meeting was just a slog. And then we finally got to the end and everyone was just like sharing their successes for the week. And it's like, why didn't we start with this? Man, it just totally would have changed the tone of everything. So that's why we start with, what's working. Next is, what's holding us back. And again, everyone notes alone. You take 4 minutes and everyone writes down everything that they think is holding the group back. And it can be anything from no knowledge sharing to, the lunch situation is bad. And the thing with these design sprints is, again, not necessarily getting to the perfect solution, but getting to getting as many solutions out there as possible. So, breaking through that creativity wall and just, jotting down everything that's bugging you. The boss's hair has been bad all week. I don't know. So then you stick them up so they're all in the same place, so everyone's looking at them. And then you vote on, those problems and what are the biggest problems that are holding you back. And you take about 3 minutes to do this. Everyone gets the same number of votes. And the way you kind of calculate that is you take the number of problems that are up on the wall and you divide it by 2. And then you divide those votes between everyone who's participating. And then from there, you kind of prioritize, which problems got the most votes and, pick like the top 3 somewhere in there. And then you start the cycle all over again. So note, stick, vote, and prioritize. So then you take those problems and you turn them into how might we's. And this is a really subtle distinction that really makes a big difference in being able to, move on to solving those problems. So what this is it reframes, a problem and comes up, it basically like opens the door to coming up with solutions. And it's a subtle, like subconscious change that that really opens the doors. So so you change it into a how might we statement. And in this case, no knowledge sharing becomes how might we make sure that everyone stays on the same page regarding project X. And so you take about 3 minutes. This is one of the only times in this process where you'll actually have an open discussion, because you want to figure out a way to phrase that how might we that gets everyone on the same page, so that everyone is understanding exactly what that means in a way that doesn't get any confusion or send people down the wrong path. And you can actually do this with any number of problems, not just the top 3, depending on what your project is and that kind of thing. And then from there, you come up with solutions for each of those 3 how might we's. Everyone takes 5 minutes again and just jots down again as many solutions as possible, quantity over quality. And then so for example, let's start using Slack, having weekly retrospectives, that kind of thing. It can be anything, from big ideas to really small ideas as far as coming up with solutions. And then again, you take 4 minutes and everyone votes on which solutions they think they should pursue. And again, it's the number of solutions divided by 2 and then distributed between the whole team evenly. And then from there, again, prioritizing, you pick the top solutions that are voted for each of the problems that you're trying to solve, and you go from there, which is actually getting to my favorite part of the entire process, which is an impact effort table. And you take 10 minutes, and this is also, again, one of the few times in the process where you actually will do a discussion. The way it works is you take all of those solutions and you place them in the chart based on how much impact and how much effort they take. And so the way you do this is you take each solution, you start in the middle, and you say, is this more impact or less impact than the middle, basically, amount of impact that you're going for, whatever that is. And you move it up and down accordingly. And then you say, okay, how much effort is it? Is it more effort or is it less effort? And you go through each of the solutions this way until you get something that looks like this. And the way you kind of decipher this is the top left quadrant, the green one here, is the stuff you should do because it's the most amount of impact with the least amount of effort. The stuff in the bottom left quadrant is quick and easy little like projects that you should just assign to someone and just move on and check it off the list. The stuff in the top right quadrant is more like long-term projects that are going to have a lot of impact, but they're going to take longer. So put them off for another day. And then the bottom right, that's going to be a lot of effort and not a lot of impact. Maybe those solutions should be shelved or considered at all. So that's how you read the impact effort chart. And then so you take each of those solutions, and the impact effort chart should take about 10 minutes to go through each of those solutions along with the discussion. And then this final step is you take each of those solutions that you decide that you're going to act on in the top left quadrant, and you turn them into actionable steps that you can do in the next 1 to 2 weeks. And you come up with 3 different steps that you can do. And the first one should be totally frictionless. It's like, okay, let's do it. And that frictionless first step is an important way to initiate that, because if it's too big of a hurdle where it's like, oh, we got to get, everybody to do such and such, and that's going to take 2 weeks unto itself, then maybe you need to break it up into smaller steps beyond that. And so that's the process. Again, note, stick, vote, prioritize. It's a little bit uncomfortable at first for some people, since this isn't how we're taught to do meetings here in the States, but it works really well at just, being able to stop, individuals from dominating a discussion, or certain, egos, or if someone's really convincing, really good at convincing other people to have their way. This gets around that and makes everything and all the ideas from everyone on the same page. So you can use these for weekly meetings. You can use these for prioritizing different projects. You can use it for prioritizing different features in different project. And actually, here's one I did with a developer based out of Winona, where he was trying to figure out which features he should focus on for his website service. And so, yeah, in the case of projects, instead of the 3 that we talked about, you do it as, okay, what's working about this project? What needs work in the project, and then prioritizing those fixes. So how do we do this online? Really quickly, back when I started doing this 30-minute action meeting workshop, back right before COVID hit. And when COVID hit, we had to figure out a way to move this remotely really quickly. And so we tried out a bunch of different tools online that are available. And surprisingly, it ended up being that Zoom is actually the system that works best on a number of fronts. First off, everyone's familiar with it at this point. Introducing new technology, I've seen in a couple different workshops where they've tried to get participants to use some new platform or whatever, and everything is subtly enough different that it becomes a problem. Zoom's familiar for everyone, so it's easy to adapt to. And their whiteboard function is basically as good as you need it to be. It's not perfect, but what is. And so what you do is you use the share screen. And I'm going to show some samples here in a minute. share screen using the whiteboard, and then you turn on annotations for all the participants. And the one tricky thing is that you have to do that through their web portal. It doesn't work if you're using the app. So subtle trick there for getting it to work. And then using a moderator, kind of like you would, like you were doing it in person. So with, again, trying to level the playing field for everybody, you can turn it off so that the people who are annotating, their annotations are nameless, which is definitely encouraged. Or another option that's a little bit more hands-on, but gives you a little bit more control as the moderator, is if everyone sends their ideas to you in private chat and then the moderator places them. Personally, just for efficiency, again, like I think just doing the nameless annotations is the way to go. And then you can also do cards in Zoom, and as well as like the actual voting. And then you do basically a new whiteboard for each step in the process. So all your work is preserved there, and you can save it for later. So this is what it looks like on a Zoom whiteboard. And I just typed up right at the top, what's moving us forward, and then made these little, Post-it notes. You can also just use the text, kind of like the down at the bottom right, like awesome team. You don't have to form it in the form of cards, but it kind of helps distinguish, especially as you get into later steps in the process. On the moderator side of things, this is what it looks like. You can see the whiteboard tools down at the bottom on the left. You can type stuff in, you can draw, and then using the stamp is how you do the votes. So everyone gets, however many number of votes, and they can just check off the things that they want to use. And then again, using the cards to distinguish between problems and, how might we use that kind of thing? How might we get more coffee? Which is always a problem these days as well. So yeah, just again, going through the process, what it can look like in Zoom. And then if you look down at the bottom right, that's where you can see the different whiteboards and add more as you go. And as the moderator, if you hop on, 5-10 minutes early, you can build out all these whiteboards ahead of time so that it makes it easy to get people through the process for each of these everyday design sprints. And you can also even do the impact effort chart here in Zoom as well. So again, design sprint core principles: together alone, don't rely on creativity. Tangible is more important than discussion. Getting started is more important than being right. So yeah, look at your calendar, find your next meeting with 3 or more people, and bring Post-its, or just sign into Zoom. So thanks for listening. And I'm Sean Williams again. And if there's any questions, it looks like we have a couple more minutes that I can answer those. And then I will go back to the other screen. Any questions? Doesn't seem like it. So I don't know if we need to, we'll end early or just hang out and chat. Okay, there's a delay apparently. So, so yeah, if there is anything, then can stick around and answer, or if we reach the end of time, then thanks again for coming. Really appreciate it. There's a question from Neil. If you have 10 problems, we end up with 5 votes. Yeah, so no, you would divide the 5 votes between the team. Yeah, you really have to prioritize. And the other thing too is, one thing that works is if you feel very strongly about one solution or one problem, allowing people to vote more than once on the same thing can really drive points home. So that's something that is allowed. And again, you can modify this to, whatever you need to, for your team in particular. So yeah, no, thanks again. Yeah, no, thank you too. Thanks to everyone for coming out. And yeah, if you have any questions, my email is there at the end. It's sewilliams@austindca.org. Happy to answer any questions you might have. And yeah, thanks again for coming.